these initial couple of chapters by Decker et al. Are really critical. But then the rest of the book, like the next 6 chapters, explain the different types of occult interpretations. So they established that the occult interpretations weren't there all along, but then they established that once they're set up, they go in all sorts of cool different directions. However, they seem to keep sighing, going, but this was just a card game in the first place. So maybe that's a problem with scholars, that they're just a little too materialist. I know there's a famous scholar right now named Jeffrey Kripal that says there is a great secret within the humanities, and that is that all our interpretations of culture, the world, and history are that everything's really depressing. And he wonders, and this is a question I've thought in my career, what would our examinations of the world look like if we looked for positive things instead of depressing things? What if instead of every time I look at a historical change, I look to see how human consciousness understands itself clearly and finds new positive ways of being human, instead of looking at the invisible hand of the marketplace or the drives of class and caste and sort of material drivers to all history. I actually think both aspects are valuable when thinking historically. So perhaps these authors themselves are performing a card trick. They're showing that there is no ancient precedence for this occult interpretation, but then they explain all these layers and accretions of errors, they would say, but those errors actually depict a really vibrant system of religious hermeneutics on the cards and their symbols. Hermeneutics from the god Hermes, finding equivalencies, understandings, and nuanced rereadings of scripture. Now, religious studies regularly makes this shift. We note that claims for anything being ancient are often not historically ancient, in fact, at all. Such claims, in fact, are a proclamation. And what do they proclaim? They proclaim that history, as they frame it, justifies the present. In other words, looking back in time at historical events, they try to justify those events based on a perspective now, or justify those historical events to justify how things are now, or to critique how things are now and say we should go back to that old way. So people would argue that the cards are ancient in order to make them more powerful. The cards are ancient, so the fresh, new, and innovative insights and artworks will be considered authoritative and powerful because they're old, even if they're not. Now, as an aside, what is at stake when, say, the Christians, when I was growing up in my church, always said that they were like the early Christian church and not like even the church of the early 20th century, and definitely not like the Catholic Church? Why would they argue that? Generally, they would say we are like the early Christian church because we are universal, we accept all people, we are anti-clerical, we're against ministers. In fact, we should all be really in the home, and we're really a little upset about being in a church right now and with a minister. They would argue that they are anti-Catholic. They are against the ritualism of the Catholic Church. They posit that innovative readings of the Christian Bible should be found by every person reading the Bible in their own language, not looking at a history of commentary or scholarship. They want to remove all strictures of authority and reveal a religion that is set for the individual to experience afresh and find their perfect own relationship with Jesus Christ on their own. What does that really sound like to me? That sounds like American individualism. So the question is, what came first? These notions of Christian Protestantism or the American context for them to come up? And if you travel around, you'll see Christianity looks really different in other spots of the world. All right, so further, what is going on with all these hyper male dude bros everywhere, it seems, who glorify Rome and Greece, that just want to live in the movie 300 for some reason, or in the movie Gladiator? I believe that they think their contemporary notions of often fractured masculinity would be well respected in ancient Greece or in Rome. In fact, the type of masculinity they would see in Greece or Rome, especially in Greece, would be quite different. It would definitely not be straight, and it would definitely not be as oriented toward, I don't know, physical strength in the same ways that our contemporary notions of masculinity are. In fact, we look at the Roman civilization, they were incredibly stratified with very few elite. So odds are if you were living in Rome, you would not be fighting in glorious wars. You'd be cannon fodder in glorious wars, but most likely you would be a subsistence farmer who's being crushed by a brutal republic that extracted quite a bit from you. Remember, history's depressing. What about the Greeks of Sparta or Troy? What did we learn about Greek religion and masculinity when we looked in all of our magic texts? Does that look like what the hyper-masculine dude bro wants now? Nothing against the hyper-masculine dude bro, but it's just tiresome. Because masculinity to me is this really vibrant thing, because I come from a different place. I come from a place where masculinity is about pushing through pain, service, humility. Anger, when used, has to be in service of protecting others. Care, also care for children, and supporting your family, not by providing for your family, but being engaged in your family. That's the type of masculinity that my father and the men that I grew up with fostered to me. Now, they're not all good. There's all sorts of problems with the masculinity I grew up in. But I just want to say that the type of masculine idealism that is posited into the past is often a masculine ideal of the present. Why do all these men want to be gladiators so bad? Because they want to be gladiators in this world, not that they want to be ones in the past. They wouldn't have liked being ones in the past. Anyway, that's just an aside. Okay, all this is to say, so what? I mean, so what if it's not old? Magic innovates. Tarot innovates. Innovation is kind of great. This is a good and exciting thing. New versions of religions are good. It means we're learning more. It means we're expanding. So why do you have to ground every religious argument you have and say that it is exactly like it was a thing done in the past, or that it's contiguous with the thing in the past? So these claims are not as much lies as they are sort of myths, not history. They're making rhetorical statements to grant power and majesty to stuff they value by putting it in the past. Modern neo-paganism, as we're going to see soon, like Wicca or Druidry or Nordic neo-animism, heathenry and whatnot, looks nothing like the paganism or witchcraft of the past. In fact, Druidry was invented in the 1970s by American forestry professors. It looks nothing like the Druids as we have recorded in Latin by the Romans who were taking them over. Well, I mean, maybe some vague associations with trees. I don't know. It's hard to say. Anyway, though modern neo-paganism or witchcraft doesn't look like what we see in the past, it claims to come from hoary antiquity. But so what? All that matters is that this stuff is effective, that it has utility. This is where I'm so postmodern. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's old. It just has to be good. So